Hello, Year 6. Okay, so today's lesson, we're going to be looking at the equator, hemispheres, tropics, and poles. So, I'm just going to talk to you for a little while just about some of those topics. And to start with, we're going to be looking at the divisions of the Earth. So, the Earth can be divided in many ways. Today, you're going to learn about the 7 most important divisions on the planet, and these are the equator, northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, the Tropic of Capricorn, the Tropic of Cancer, the North Pole, and the South Pole. So let's find out more. All right, firstly, the equator. So the equator is an imaginary line that divides the Earth in half. So you can see it just on here, look, if I use my mouse. So there isn't really a big red line that goes around the middle of the Earth. It's imaginary. We can't see it. The equator is an equal distance between the North and South poles. So if it's an equal distance, it means it's smack bang right in the middle. The weather on the equator is hot all year round, every single day of the year. And at the equator, day and night are both 12 hours long. Did you know that although the weather is generally hot, there is a mountain on the equator where you can ski? That seems quite strange, doesn't it? How I've just told you that it's really hot all year round, but there's a mountain you can ski on. A quick challenge question for you then, Year 6. Why do you think places at the equator are hot? If you pause the video here for a moment, you can discuss as a class, or if you're doing this at home, you can jot some ideas down and just have a think about why those places near the equator are so hot. Okay, moving on then, we're going to look at the northern hemisphere. Now have a little think, which way is north and which way is south? Okay, so think of a compass. North is going to be at the top. So all this bit here is the northern hemisphere. It's north of the equator. So the part of the Earth north of the equator is called the northern hemisphere. 80% of the world's population lives in the northern hemisphere. 90% of land is in the northern hemisphere too. And the northern hemisphere includes all of North America, Europe, and most of Asia and Africa. So let's have a think. I wonder if you can work out if there's 80% of the world's population in the northern hemisphere, how many is going to be in the southern? And what about 90% of land being in the northern hemisphere? If there's 90% in the northern, I wonder how much would be in the southern hemisphere. See if you can put your hands up and answer the question. Right, southern hemisphere. Let's see if you were right. The part of the Earth south of the equator, so remember south is at the bottom, so north, south, then we have east and west. So the part of the Earth south of the equator is the southern hemisphere. Only 20% of the world's population lives in the southern hemisphere. I wonder how many of you got that right. And then 90% of the planet's water is in the southern hemisphere. That's a lot of water. The southern hemisphere also includes all of Australia, Antarctica, and most of South America. Here's another did you know? When it is winter in the southern hemisphere, it is summer in the northern hemisphere. So that's why when we talk about having snow at Christmas and having a white Christmas in England up in the northern hemisphere, on that very same day, although it could be 9 or 11 hours in front, down in Australia, they quite often will celebrate with a barbecue and a trip to the beach because it's the height of their summer then. Right, Tropic of Cancer, which is this imaginary dotted line just around here. The Tropic of Cancer is an imaginary line in the Northern Hemisphere. It is also called the Northern Tropic. It is the furthest north that you can ever go and still have the sun directly overhead. This happens once a year in June, and the day is called the solstice. Did you know in Latin, the language that the Romans spoke, Cancer means crab? Have a little think. Where else would we have heard? If you remember at the beginning, I said the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Have a little think while we're talking about these, where you might have heard those two words before. There's also a few others, like we've got Aries and Leo. Have any of you heard of them before? Here we go, the Tropic of Capricorn, which is, let me get my mouse, just this dotted line down there. So the Tropic of Capricorn is an imaginary line in the southern hemisphere. It is the opposite of the Tropic of Cancer. Similar to the Tropic of Cancer, it is the furthest south that you can go and still have the sun directly overhead. This happens once a year in December. This day is also called the solstice. Did you know that every year both tropics move north or south a little bit? Another challenge question for you, Year 6. The Tropic of Cancer passes through 16 countries. The Tropic of Capricorn passes through 10 countries. Can you name any of them? Okay, pause the video here and see if you can discuss as a class how many countries you can come up with that the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn pass through. Okay, now we're going to look at the North Pole. The North Pole is the northernmost point on Earth. There is no land at the North Pole, only ice. The ice is about 3 meters thick. No one owns the North Pole. It is in what we call international waters. In summer, the sun never sets. Did you know? At the North Pole, no matter which way you point, you will always face south. And the South Pole. So the South Pole is the southernmost place on Earth. It is located on land topped by more than 2,700 meters of solid ice. The South Pole is much colder than the North Pole. There is a scientific base at the South Pole where between 50 and 200 scientists live and work. Did you know that the first person to reach the South Pole was also the first official person to reach the North Pole? His name was Roald Amundsen. Okay, that's the end of that little bit of information for you. You've now got some tasks to do. So, firstly, there is, I can't show you one here, you have a sheet to fill in with some blank boxes in, and there should be some keywords down the side, and you need to identify where all of those things are that I've just spoke about. So the equator, the northern and southern hemisphere, North Pole, South Pole, and the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. Fill those in for me. When you've done that, there are some quiz cards for you to have a go at. So you should have one each, so a set each, and you can just tick your answers or like highlight your answers that you think are right, and then at the end of the lesson, the teacher can go through and see who got the most correct. If you have any time at the end, I don't mind if you want to colour in the big sort of world map that you've got that you've just filled in with the North Pole and that on there. Okay, so that takes us to the end of this lesson, Year 6, and I will see you very soon. Take care.